All right, so we're back again. Here we are. I've compiled my short list for my first video here. So if you see me looking over in this direction, I'm just referring to my notes. This is again about the Stephen Avery, Brenden Dassey situation with Teresa Halbach. And these are the questions that I have, and I believe like really, some of them are going to be like ones that I haven't heard addressed on many of the videos, or some of my thoughts that I haven't really heard addressed on many of the videos as well. So here we go. We'll just jump right into it. First question is why was Brenden re-questioned so many times? They want to sit there and say, "Oh, we didn't coerce him. We didn't put anything to his head. None of that." But yet they went back to him several times to question him and just really seemed like nail the point home that he had something to do with this, and all that. The other one is that what really gets me is you know it's said that Mark Weigert and Tom Fassbender claim they didn't promise him anything, but they tell him several times that they're on his side and he'll feel better if he tells the truth, and all this stuff. um and the comments that oh, we already know everything, these tactics shouldn't be used if they truthfully already know. you know it's like they're accusing him, but they're not, but they are. It's the whole good cop bad cop thing in there too. You see that. And yeah. And then my other point is they did feed Brenden things he probably didn't know. I mean, he makes it well known in one of his statements, that he only knows what he's heard on the news. you know and yes, the whole thing about you know it's always brought, well, Branden was read his rights. Well, Branden was 16 years old. He there's a known that he had a slow learning curve. That he may not have understood everything. I know adults that don't know the Miranda rights, or what they mean, or what they imply. So reading of the rights to a 16-year-old kid that you know probably didn't even understand his civics class, if he had a civics class. Because that's where I learned about my Miranda rights, was in my civics class. But yet again, nowadays I don't even think they teach that in schools. So that's a big thing. And then my whole thing about Brenden is that he should have been released solely based on his first attorney's gross negligence. I mean, I don't know an attorney in the world that would, if I had an attorney and he was representing me, and again, this goes back to the whole, Brandon's lack of understanding, his lack of, his knowing his rights. Because if Branden truthfully would have known his rights, then, he would have, he wouldn't, he would have never agreed to talk to those cops again without the attorney present. I mean, cops are manipulative. They're trained to lie, so they get the truth out of you, or their narrative out of you, we should say. Um, uh, so yeah, I mean, right then and there, I feel as though right after whatever his name was, Kaczynski, right out. I mean, he basically abandoned Branden. He basically set forth, Branden, you're guilty. You just need to confess. And my lawyer believes 100. I mean, I know they probably do. Don't get me wrong. I believe that lawyers, even non-public defending lawyers, believe, probably do believe their client may be guilty, but it's their job to defend that. And that's the problem overall with public defenders is they don't really, I mean, they represent you, but they don't represent you. They're going upon the narrative that's brought forth to them by the prosecuting attorney, and then truthfully only offering you um the bare minimum defense. So write that in there. I mean, Brenden got totally screwed in a sense. Ken Craig, again, Ken Kratz's press conference that he had about Brenden's confession. I mean, the things he described in that, that almost guaranteed that Brenden and Steve were not going to get a fair trial. And then everybody says, oh, well, Steven's lawyers, they had the opportunity to move it out of the state, blah, blah, blah. Well, you got to remember at one point during this whole thing, before the trial even happened, I was around when this happened. I live in Wisconsin, okay? I remember this being national news. So if it's national news, you're not going to get a fair trial. That's a problem with our criminal justice system, where we that we have to look at. What do we limit? I understand that everything should be public record. We should know, but there comes a point where you can't get a fair trial from your peers, because regardless, your peers have been exposed to certain elements of it. It's almost a given. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how we could possibly fix that, but in hindsight, I believe that the press conference in this case really really just sealed the fate. Excuse me. Really sealed their fate. Even if Brenden's confession was supposed to be true, I can't fathom how he and Steven got rid of any trace of Teresa in that trailer. If that's that was their narrative. That's where the assault. That's where these horrible things happen to Teresa. A good majority of them happen to Teresa in that in that trailer, in that bedroom. One aspect, Brenden says they cut her hair. Okay, where's the hair? I mean, you can, I've cleaned a room pretty darn good, and then went back into that room and saw hair laying on the floor. If all these horrible things happened to her the way Brenden painted it, and then the way that the state used that information, then I would suspect that they come on, a hair, a speck of blood, there's no way you're gonna get rid of all of it. There's just no way. I don't care how they said Steven cleaned it. There's no way you're gonna get rid of all of it. As far as the garage goes, where they say they finished the job. Okay, so they clean the garage, but then again, I go back to all these other, things, and all these, and then looking at the pictures that, the state presented it as evidence. I mean, sure, he cleaned it. Okay. Let's just say he did do it, and he did clean it. How does that account for all the dust and grime and other things still around? How did they find specks of deer blood, but none of Teresa Halbach's? They want to point to Brenden's bleached pants. Well, that Brenden admitted several times that he helped Steven clean the garage, before. How do we know that that wasn't the pants he used back then? They obviously weren't an extremely wealthy family, so as long as the pants weren't like ruined, you'd still wear them. And in 2000, when this happened in 2005-ish, the whole bleached pants look was kind of sort of a thing, so I mean, it still kind of is a thing. So I mean, maybe Brenden thought it was cool, So that in my eyes, the police pants really doesn't prove anything. I mean, to me, anyways. Um, you know, and then the other big thing. I mean, they claim that she was shot. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess that they say it was hunting season, but from the way they say it was bow season. So while a gunshot probably wouldn't be out of the norm, you would think maybe maybe there possibly a police report about that, especially if they go with the narrative that she was shot 10 times. I mean, you would expect that maybe somebody would have said something. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's I'm overlooking that. Um, but yeah, I mean, just not a single hair found, not a single speck of blood, anywhere. I mean, uh, I can't imagine doing the things that they that Brenden claimed, and they're not being that, or I'm sure, you know, if she was bludgeoned, um, there would have been, I mean, their narrative is just, I mean, all wrong. I mean, if when did she, you know, get thrown in the SUV, to get the blood in there? I mean, was she? I mean, and if and then was she bleeding in the house? I mean, how did I don't know. Yeah, so that right there, a couple points. Um, my other flip the page here for me. And besides the RAV4, why was every other piece of evidence, um, you know, the key, the burn barrel with the phone and camera, the bones in the pit, they were all found by Manitowoc police or Manitowoc County sheriffs, who they were supposed to be there in support. From everything that was said, they were supposed to be there with for support, to provide assistance, which I don't argue with. I get it, but in hindsight, when they're finding almost every single key piece of evidence, that begins to be a problem for me. That's where I question it just a little bit. The whole dog by the pit thing. We saw the pit. We thought maybe we should look in the pit, but there was an aggressive dog there. And from what everybody said, all the family members anyway. And I know dogs are weird towards other people. I understand that, but um, in a hindsight too, there, my main point is you're telling me that all these cops that were there, or all these people searching that were there and present, didn't have like the idea to maybe call animal control, or even maybe another canine officer who's obviously had to go through some classes to deal with animals, to see if they couldn't get this dog away from the fire pit and maybe chain somewhere else so they could search that fire pit. I mean, that the whole dog story just doesn't jive with me at all. And then my other question is and I know everybody points to, oh well, Steven's story changed, blah blah blah. But I mean, the one part about Steven's story that kind of strikes me is he says that his mom came down on the 31st to bring him his mail, and they sat and talked for a little bit. What's not mentioned in all my research, anyways, that I found, was his mother Dolores ever asked if that point of Steven's story was that ever collaborated? Was she ever asked? I mean, because she doesn't seem to me, and to a lot of the other people who've touched on talking about Stephen Avery, as a type that that could lie, and lie convincingly, if she was lying. I mean, was she even asked if she was there that day? And when she asked if she, I mean, I could see if, maybe she did bring the mail and Stephen, exasperated the story about, oh, I sat and talked with my mom for a bit. But I mean, even if she came to, even if she just came to the door and Stephen answered the door, I'm sure if that were the case, she could give you some insight, or she could have gave you some insight on, the the way Stephen was acting or looked. I mean, I'm sure if anybody would know, she would know if he was acting weird. Um, and then the no photos of the bones when they're discovered in the fire pit. I mean, I don't know. Uh, in one of the videos I watched, and I'll drop their name. I think they're a pretty cool group of guys. They're called Mind Shock True Crime. They're talking about the bones and about how one of the I believe from the DCI, one of the DCI techs was asked, well, why weren't pictures taken, before you guys started moving the bones, and therefore, and he plainly said it's because the site was disturbed. We don't do that if the site is disturbed, because we don't know what was where and where was what. So I mean, it was a bang up job even from the get go as far as the bones go. And then so yeah, I mean, only 60% of the bones were found, or less than 60% of the bones are found. Less than 60% of the bones are found, or something to that effect. So where's the rest of the bones? They said, oh well, there was some in Janda's burn barrel, there was some in the, some over here, some over there, some over there. But I mean, so I mean, they're implying, basically Stephen gathered up burned it in the fire pit or a burn barrel, because that's another theory. Burned it in a fire pit or burn barrel, and then just decided to scatter the bones all over, all over the property. And I mean, I even get why you do that, to make others be guilty, or look guilty or whatever. But bottom line, why would he leave any in his fire pit? And you can sit there, go, oh, say, well, oh, he missed some, blah blah blah. Well, you'd think he'd get like at least the biggest ones out. I mean, that's just, I mean, my theory, I guess. The coroner not being allowed on the site. I mean, out of all the Manitowoc, county people, who bottom line had something to do with the $36 million lawsuit. The coroner was the one person from that county, pretty much, who had nothing to do with that, as far as officers of the law go. And then I know various people play it down and they say, oh well, blah blah blah. I mean, but if you read the law, it doesn't say whatever. It says when remains are found, the coroner must be notified, or a coroner must be notified. Now, the narrative that Calumet and Manitowoc spin is that, oh well, they already had all these, people on scene, blah blah blah, from from DCI and all this and all that. But it's just like, hey, okay, I still don't understand why she wasn't notified. And then they want to claim she's a disgruntled employee too. I've heard that. But bottom line, saying she couldn't be on the property because of the lawsuit, you know, uh, uh, that's just outrageous to me. I mean, um, it's just it's. I mean, to that almost seems like they were playing a game to see how far they could push, their narrative, how far they could spin their tail. Because if they brought someone in who, you know, didn't have something against Steven, obviously, I mean, I mean, Yeah, I mean, they were acting as though, almost as though the coroner had already formed an opinion that Stephen Avery wasn't guilty, and and they couldn't have that. So that's whatever on that one. Two, uh, I've had a lot of bonfires. I'm a old guy, in my eyes, anyways. Um, I've had a lot of bonfires, and we've gotten them, you know, raging. I mean, just raging. And yeah, I'm not, they're hot, but I can't imagine in October in Wisconsin. I live in Wisconsin. I live probably maybe an hour and a half from the Green Bay area where, this all kind of sort of went down. Um, so in October in Wisconsin, I mean, it can be, reasonably warm ish, but I mean, with the winds, with, you know, uh, I mean, the changing weather. Wisconsin's it's got to be one of the only states, besides the ones that surround us here, where you can have, and I'm being serious because it's just happened like last week, where you can have 2 days of sunshine, snow, rain, and the weathermen didn't predict all that. So, I mean, I just don't see that getting that fire hot enough outside to do that. Even in a burn barrel, I can't imagine. I can't figure out what you possibly could add to have that much heat. I mean, because friends of mine have had burn barrels, and like, I don't know. I mean, I've never had a desire to dispose of something such as that. So I mean, I guess I'm just, just speculation, but I've always wondered, how they figured and it could get hot enough outside in a fire, pit. I mean, even if it was a big fire pit and you could burn whatever you wanted to burn, I mean, and then now the testimony about the fire pit, the eyewitness testimony, nobody could decide how big the fire was, or whether or not there even was a fire. So that, another big question I've always had, they the narrative is that they found these license plates, or the license plates to the RAV4, crumbled up, or well, bent up, and thrown in another vehicle. Were those ever tested for DNA or fingerprints or anything else? I mean, because I mean, just go. I mean, if you know, I kind of sort of we're to paint out a timeline of what possibly could have happened if Stephen really did do it. Was I imagine he did all this stuff for whatever, blah blah blah, to her. Then he had to get rid of the RAV4, or go park it where it was found. Um, so I imagine he either A, took off the plates before or after. Okay, if he took them off before, he would have possibly had it. But in my eyes, he probably took them off while he parked it there. So the narrative there then would be he could have been actively bleeding, because that's when obviously when he was in the vehicle driving it, more than likely. So we've been actively bleeding. He takes out the plates, disconnects the battery as they claim. Deposits his sweat DNA, which again, if he was actively bleeding, because I just don't see him going back to this vehicle several times. I don't see that if he did it. So I imagine this all happened, the moving of the vehicle and the disconnection of the battery and the taking off the plates all happened in the same day. So he's actively bleeding. So he starts the RAV, apparently leaves blood, where they said he left blood. Takes the plates off. Okay, so I mean, we kind of established there at that point he doesn't have gloves on. Okay, because if he had gloves on, he wouldn't have bled in the car. He doesn't have gloves on because if he had gloves on, he couldn't have got this imaginary sweat DNA that they keep, Ken Kratz said it was sweat DNA and it wasn't sweat DNA numerous times in the trial. So, and yet again too, you figure you open the hood. I'd figure, I don't know what hand he cut himself on, because I mean that's never really shown. But I mean, if it was by the key, I would assume it was his right hand, because I don't know a lot of people that start their vehicle with their left hand unless they're, physically unable to use their right hand in some way. But I don't know. So we'll just say for happenstance, the cut was on his right hand. When I open my hood on my car and I got a messed up little latch, I use my right hand. So if he was actively bleeding, you'd figure there'd be blood there too, unless again, he's this master criminal mastermind and can clean up things that normal people can't, but leave certain evidence there. Leave certain things there. It just baffles me. And then the whole fingerprints on the license plate. If he did that, there'd have to be fingerprints. If Brenden helped him do that, you can almost guarantee Brenden wasn't wearing gloves. And I don't care how careful you are, whether they say, oh well, he could have been wearing a long sleeve shirt or a jacket, and blah blah, and crush the plates. I don't care how careful you are. You're gonna mess up and you're gonna leave a print somewhere. You're going to. I mean, even a psychopath, a mastermind killer, eventually messes up and leaves a print, leaves some sort of evidence that's substantial. Like the whole blood in the RAV4 thing, it doesn't jive with me just because, of where it is. I mean, they make it seem like, oh, he searched the car, blah, 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 but yet there's no, there's no blood in the glove box. There's some of it. Okay. Yeah, there is some of his blood in the back or whatever. I don't know, maybe Steven didn't even do it. Maybe Steven happened upon the RAV4 alone, and maybe he thought, I don't know, because he really hasn't said this, but maybe he thought, in his head, oh well, shit, this looks like that girl's car, they're already looking at me, I better get rid of it, and honestly, if he thought maybe one of his family members did do it, I don't know if I would, but I mean, come on, who wouldn't cover for their family? Honestly, a lot of people would cover that up or hide it. I mean, who knows? And then my other thing too, the last subject I'd want to touch on for for this little episode is the key. The key has always bothered me. Not even the way that it was found, but I believe it was one of Steven's lawyers. They said this doesn't look like a key that you'd use every day. And in fact, they've said several times that it's the valet key. Did she just recently lose or misplace her keys? I mean, they say, oh well, Steven got rid of the real keys and kept this key. I don't see that. My other thing is out of all the stuff that's been available to me without having to file open records requests, which I may do if I find out, I know the process, but I don't know, with the whole, if they charge for them, because in some places they charge for that. And I don't know if I'd want to spend the money just for that, whatever. So I'm looking more into that. But the key, was it ever tested to see if this key that was found in Steven's bedroom, was it ever tested to see if it worked in the car? Because there's been conflicting stories about how the photographer, or about how they said they locked up the vehicle before it left to go to Madison, and when the photographer arrived the next morning, the driver's side door was open already. So and they didn't have that key then. So did they, they may have jimmied it open. I get that. But was the one key ever tested? And then my other thing is somewhere in the dialogue and the information that I've gathered over watching various videos and stuff, is that there actually was a key made for the RAV4. Well, when was that key made? Was that key, and then there's a discrepancy of when the tow truck driver and Ken Kratz, they both kind of sort of left at the same time. Nobody really knows they left together. And then the tow truck didn't arrive in Madison, in a reasonable, from Green Bay to Madison, maybe 2 hours. It took them 4. So did they stop off and maybe get a key, made? And then this is the key that eventually ended up in, or did they get multiple keys made? And then this is the key that they find like it was like the next day in Stephen Avery's, place. I mean, it looks like a brand new key. It looks like a brand new key. It doesn't look like a key that you'd use, every day. I mean, and I know that, you could say, well, back in 2005, that vehicle wasn't that old, so the key might not have been, used every day, or whatever. But it just, to me, the key looks brand new. It just looks 100% brand new, like it was just made, recently, and then too, my big thing is even keys I don't use, every day. I've had a set, excuse me. I've had a set of keys where I had other keys on it. And eventually, keys, rubbing against keys in your pocket, they wear down, whatever. And then the whole fact that only Steven's DNA was found on that key, what that implies to me is that if it was that, okay, so Steven tried to clean the key. So, whether he was, keep it as a souvenir or whatever. So Steven tried to clean the key, and they found that key, on, what is it, November, they found the car, then they found the key. So November 5th, they find the car. November 6th or 7th, they find the key, right? So in my eyes, it's just like, and then Steven and them didn't leave for whatever until well after the police are there. So in my eyes, he already knew he was being investigated. Why would he keep the key? Okay, he was leaving for the cabin, so he could easily, jam it in his pocket left and threw it away somewhere up there. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. You know, if they want to paint him as this criminal mastermind, you know, but then dumb him down at the same time, it's like you can't you can't wash away this and then make him seem like a genius over here. You know, I mean, so those are the questions that I have. But like I said, the number one question I'd really love to know is the whole thing about his mom. Was his mom ever really asked if she did bring mail to him on the 31st? I mean, because bottom line, ultimately, I mean, I don't care if he had her gagged, bound, you know, knocked out, whatever. You know, if Dolores was walking over there, or like, you know, or even drove the golf cart, like you said, you know, she would be the one to know that if the, you know, the RAV4 was there, if Steven was acting weird, anything of that sort. I strongly believe that. But like I said, I mean, I'm gonna try to figure some of this stuff out and maybe do some open records requests to see if I can find anything like that. I mean, because I've found some documents, you know, online, you know, through various sources. But the problem with that is I don't know whether or not they've been altered. You know, people say, "Oh no, they're not altered." Well, yeah, they could be. You know, I really don't trust a lot of things on Reddit because, you know, you don't know if they've been altered. There are a lot of documents on Reddit. I found a whole website with nothing but like the court transcripts and all that, but like it says it's a Wisconsin, like a Wisconsin government website, but it's not. You know, I mean, you can clearly tell that it's not. And then there's a lot of things missing too. So, but I'm definitely going to try to find out if you know, if these things are ever done. You know, and then the other thing really for me is that key. You know, because there's no, as far as I know, and as far as, you know, what other people have brought forth, no one's ever really mentioned if that key was tested or not. No one's ever really, you know, got down to it and said, yeah, you know, that key was the key that was used to open it and blah, blah, blah. You know, I mean, and then the whole conflicting story about the door, you know, I mean, if the, you know, there's just a lot of time there where that vehicle was in, you know, the potential to be, you know, be altered or whatever. So, you know, you can't believe that, you know, I mean, even the color, you know, looks, they said it was green, then it was blue, then they show it in the crime lab in the photos. And I know with the flashes can change color, but I mean, I really don't see a green going to almost a dark blue purple, you know, but I could be wrong. I don't know. You know, I'm not like a photo forensic scientist either. So, but yeah, so those are my two questions. You know, was his mom ever asked if she did bring the mail to him? And why not? If she wasn't, um, you know, oh yeah, were the license plates ever tested for prints or DNA? And if not, why not? And did the key really fit in the RAV4? Was the key really a key that you could be, you know, that you could use every day in the RAV4? You know, that would even would it even unlock the doors? Okay. You know, was it for a Toyota RAV4? I mean, because they show one key and then they show that key and they kind of sort of look different. You know, they want to say, oh, well, this one was a valet key. You know, but like I had a car once that had a valet key and it said right on the key, valet key, but like you couldn't use it to start the engine. I mean, you could start it, but then the engine would shut off. But you'd use the, you know, the normal key with the, you know, the normal key and it would start and it'd go fine. So I don't know how specifically a valet key works. Maybe that's something I could, you know, I mean, maybe that's something I'll research because that's kind of what they claim that key was a valet key. So that's that. So hopefully, you know, you guys, I've given you guys some things to think about. I've definitely given myself more things to think about. And if you like my videos, tune in. And if you don't, well, tune out. But thank you, and you all have a wonderful day.